Hi, this is Emily Brand, and this is my presentation on active versus passive learning in nursing education. Some objectives I hope to meet with my presentation are for you to be able to define active and passive learning, identify advantages and disadvantages of both learning styles, demonstrate knowledge of current research on these learning techniques, and discuss ways online students can utilize active learning. So, what is active learning? Active learning are learning experiences which facilitate student engagement and helps learners to actively process information. Some examples of active learning with student engagement are group work or discussions, role playing with other students, interactive games, case study reviews, and debates. Passive learning, on the other hand, is a learning style in which students utilize their audio and visual senses to gather information. The information is acquired from memorization and then internalized. Some examples of passive learning are lectures, notes, handouts, audio-visual media, and reading assignments. This type of learning is the traditional or didactic learning that has been utilized in classrooms for centuries. Some benefits of active learning are it promotes critical thinking of students, enhances student motivation, engages students in the classroom, and promotes content retention. Some benefits of passive learning are that it lowers anxiety levels by not having to perform in front of other students. Students have this as their preference, which is mostly from socialization and years of using this kind of learning, especially throughout high school. It also provides students with all or most of the necessary information needed because the instructors know what will be on the test and what is important, so this is the information they present in class. And it is concrete and organized, and it's a classic way of teaching, which most instructors and students are comfortable with. There are, however, some disadvantages to both these learning styles. Some active learning disadvantages are faculty must be aware of content that's difficult for students to comprehend. So the faculty should know the difficult things in the topics they're presenting, because they shouldn't have the students actively engaged in too difficult of topics, because then that lets the students run on their own without being instructed totally on these difficult topics. It must be learner-centered, which is a change from the teacher-centered teaching that most of us are used to. It must be organized and engaging. Having students actively involved in projects that aren't interesting to them may just turn into busy work and no knowledge retention. Active learning also is more of a knowledge application versus knowledge acquisition style of learning. This isn't necessarily a disadvantage, but knowledge application is easy for students to fake, even unknowingly. They just may recite information to their instructor or their peers and not actually be comprehending the information. Active learning also relies heavily on student engagement, so if students are timid or lack motivation, they may not um, benefit so much from active learning situations. Some passive learning disadvantages are that faculty cannot assure comprehension, oftentimes until testing takes place when it's too late. It also requires little cognitive effort from students, and if the lectures last too long, the students will go into a daze and not be actively listening. There's limited time for questions and clarification. Many times, instructors allot just enough time for the lectures to cover the content, and they don't leave much time for students to clarify topics covered in class. Students may also be reluctant to ask questions in this type of learning environment, and it becomes tedious with time. Classes after classes, students sit and listen, and they just become accustomed to it and may not pay as much attention and retain as much information. There's limited opportunity for concept application. In nursing, this may be not as true because of the clinical environment, but a lot of times lectures are simply that, just lectures and listening, and no actual content application. Some evidence for active and passive learning. There are a few studies here. This one by Vetter in 2017 recommends utilizing active learning strategies in the classroom with millennial students to enhance learning and improve understanding of evidence-based practice. This study really went into evidence-based practice and the physical clinical aspect of nursing, and it talked about how millennials are very much driven by technology. So using this in the classroom helps prevent them from getting essentially bored and being able to learn how to actively do certain tasks and retain information. Johnson and Mighton in 2005 performed a study which determined that lecture notes in combination with group discussion resulted in significantly higher examination scores amongst nursing students as opposed to lecture alone. They also went into detail about how the examination scores as a nursing student go on to positively reflect NCLEX scores and passing to become registered nurses. And another study by Al-Jazwi and Al-Bashtawi in 2015 reported that effective teaching needs immediate feedback, which cannot be completed in didactic or traditional lectures. These researchers found that a Jeopardy-style learning game actively involved students and had higher student satisfaction scores than didactic lecturing. This study went really into the active learning aspect and kind of denounced traditional lectures. However, they did mention that student satisfaction doesn't necessarily mean um, test scores are better, but that students are more satisfied with this type of learning. And here's a quote here from Johnson and Mighton. It says, "In-class discussion is one of the most effective strategies for promoting active learning. The discussion method provides learners with an opportunity to critically think about the topic being discussed, which facilitates learning at higher intellectual levels." One thing I liked about this study is that it really conveyed how important traditional lectures still are today and just added discussions to it to give it the active learning aspect, which I really liked because it's easy for faculty to just allot some extra time at the end or beginning of classes for students to ask questions and combine the active and passive learning natures. And then a quote here from the Vetter study says that faculty observed the shift in ownership and overall enthusiasm with a blended learning flipped classroom. This is regarding nursing students presenting topics in groups in lieu of a didactic lecture. The flipped classroom is something that I saw in a lot of studies. It's basically just students performing their own research and presenting mostly in groups their information they found to the class so that they're involved in the actual teaching of the material. I also found a study that I found interesting on active learning use in online education. I thought it applied a lot to our class. According to Phillips 2005, learner participation stimulates high order cognitive processing And this can be difficult to achieve in an online learning program because nurses often participate in lifelong learning via online classes. Active learning techniques must be utilized in online nursing curricula. And actually, what I found whenever I was going over the examples is I can look back in my master's degree and bachelor's classes, and I've utilized many of these, and they have helped me to retain information. Some ways that active engagement can be achieved in online learning are writing, such as reflective journals, online discussions, interactive online games, case studies with required responses, group projects, presentations, and role playing. And in conclusion, both active and passive learning styles have a place in nursing education. While there is a transition to more active engagement, a combination of active and passive learning styles continues to yield positive outcomes. And there are my references. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you for watching.